All right, everyone, we'll just recommence. Now, I understand were there some officials that needed to correct the record on some matters, as I took it. Yeah, do you want to come to the table and do that, please? That's all right. And could I just also ask, just to help hands start? Oh dear. When you have your name plaque, just make sure you bring it forward, not behind the mics. So can you just bring it forward so they can see your name? Yep. Thank you. Good on you. All right. Hello.
Thank you.
Professor.
Tanya Munro, Chief Defence Scientist. Just wanted to correct the record after we checked some facts on a couple of points related to the ghost shark and the earlier comments by Senator Shoebridge. So 2 points. Peter Quinn, in his capacity as Head of Naval Capability, was one of the signatories to the original co-development contract. So that's one element I'm correcting the record on. And the second is that original co-development contract was $50 million of Commonwealth money and $50 million of Anduril money in US dollars, not Australian dollars. So they're the 2 points of fact I'm wishing to correct.
That's right. I think you mentioned there were two agencies, but you're just making the point clearer, weren't you?
$50 million from the Commonwealth and $50 million US from Anduril, both of those in US dollars.
Yeah, okay. All right.
That's the factual
Was there
correction.
someone else?
No, that was it.
Oh, that was it?
I was just
okay.
up to support.
Oh, they were the
In
two
case of
things.
it, yeah, they were the two things.
All right. Thank you. Now, on that note, are you ready, Sarah Henderson? Sarah Henderson, yeah. Hendo. All right. You've got the Court Deputy Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.
All right.
Mr Moriarty, I just wanted to return to the new Defence Delivery Agency. If this is the biggest defence shake-up in 50 years, why did we find out last night that CEA, ASC and ANI have to read about this in the paper instead of hearing about it directly from you?
Senator, I think it was, it's very important to say we believe that the primary and first cab off the rank would be to engage with our own staff. This is a very significant change in the department, in its structure and processes, and the government's got a very strong policy of the need for engagement with all staff on these machinery of government or other really substantial structural changes. We are now establishing a task force and going through a process which will culminate in July 2027, and there is an active program of engagement being planned for engagement with major defence industry and the defence industry associations. During that time, Australian defence industry will have ample opportunity to engage with the department and with the task force to provide their input into how this might best work. So I think that those views will be really consequential and important in how we do the detailed design for the agency. But I think ministers wish to keep the announcement appropriately under wraps until they were ready to make that announcement, and then our first obligation was to inform our staff.
Okay, so you've got a 25-minute industry briefing tomorrow. Can you just provide the details of that? And I'm just questioning whether that's a sufficient amount of time.
Yeah.
And have you even worked out even rudimentary detail, Mr Moriarty? It looks very much on the run.
Senator,
So,
I wouldn't accept that it's on the run,
Okay.
Senator, but it's a first touch. A first touch point with them to give them as much detail as we can, and then to just reassure them that there will be thorough consultation through this process. A lot of people have got questions about detailed matters which won't be settled for for the officers of the department to get on the front foot and do those engagements, and there will be much more fulsome and comprehensive engagements in the coming months.
All right, so who has been invited to the industry briefing tomorrow?
Yeah, Chris Deeble, the Deputy Secretary of Capability Acquisition and Sustainment Group. So we've decided to break that up into 2 slots. The first slot will be with Primes. We issued the invite to them on Monday following the government announcement, and then the second invite will be to peak bodies, so the industry groups, Australian Industry Group, Australian Industry Defence Network, and also all the state advocates following that meeting. The reason why the first meeting's 25 minutes is so we can reset then for the second meeting. We have talking points that we will be using to talk to them. We also send out a LinkedIn to all of the industry players describing the DDA aspects to them in summary, and we'll continue that engagement throughout the development of the plan for the implementation of the DDG by mid-year next year and the DDA the following year.
And Mr Moriarty, how long has the DDA been in the planning?
We've been engaging on these reform issues with our ministers for many months, Senator.
The actual agency, and who came up with the idea of the new agency?
Well, it's evolved.
Was it advice from your department?
It's evolved as we've discussed this with our ministers, but I want to be very clear. Our ministers have got very strong views about procurement and delivery reform, and so they have given us broad guidance on what they wanted us to work to flesh out. But I think it's one where we've had a really creative engagement between the government, our ministers, and then asking us to come up with a detailed plan.
So we're 3.5 years away. Sorry, I'll start that again. We are 3.5 years into this government. The DDA won't be fully up and running until almost the next election. So my question is this real and urgent reform, or is this more a game of departmental musical chairs? Because I'm still not convinced that this is going to be anything more, Mr Moriarty, than a rebadging, because the substantive function of the DDA is very unclear. So could you perhaps respond to those concerns?
Well, Senator, all I can say, I mean, our ministers are very committed to procurement and delivery reform, and they've made it very clear to us what they want to see from this delivery agency and the other capability development work that will be consolidated with the Vice Chief. They've talked to us about how they want us to go about improving our costing assurances, the contestability function within the department. So I'm in no doubt that our ministers are very driven to make a very significant effort in this regard. And as Mr Miles and Mr Conroy have said, you know, the defence budget is growing. Our projects are becoming more complex and sophisticated, and Defence needs to reassure the government and the Australian taxpayers that the money that is appropriated to us for capability is well spent. And I think this is an important reform to try and improve that delivery capability.
Does this reflect a lack of confidence or even despair in the current leadership of Defence?
I believe, Senator, that we've engaged constructively with our ministers. They are very keen to improve capability delivery and program delivery, as is the leadership of the department. So I think our ministers have said all of these projects are always in need of a really rigorous scrub to make sure that we are doing the best we can. As you'd be aware, Senator, over 80% of our projects are delivered on time and on budget. So that there is clearly areas where we want to improve program delivery, but that's not to say, and our ministers appreciated it, that a lot of excellent work is being done in the department across the delivery groups to deliver capability for the ADF.
Just going back to the industry briefing, are you going to be able to walk industry through some details such as organisational structure, such as timelines? How detailed? I mean, you referred to the fact that you have talking points for tomorrow. Do you have a copy of those talking points that you could share with us now?
I don't.
No, but we could make those available on notice.
Oh, thank you. Does anyone have them here tonight that they could come to the table?
No. No, I
No.
don't. No.
So could you just walk me through what detail will be provided to industry tomorrow?
So there is a lot more work to be done by the task force implementing the plan. The timelines that we can provide is the establishment of the DDG, the Defence Delivery Group, by the 1st of July 26, and the establishment of the DDA by the 1st of July 27. The organisational structure and that work will be part and parcel of the work of the task force to be able to flesh that out in more detail.
All right, and look, just on notice, could we get a copy of the invitation and the list of invitees to tomorrow's briefings? Are they going to be in Canberra?
We'll be doing that via VidCon, so people will be phoning in. It's a Teams connection that we're using.
So if this is not about an organisational structure or not about a master plan or setting out sufficient detail so industry can have some guidance about what is happening, doesn't that seem to suggest that this is very rudimentary in the planning? There doesn't seem to be, in other words, I'll say, Mr Moriarty, there doesn't seem to be a lot of meat on the bones.
We are months into a process which will culminate in July 2027 with a new agency. The consolidation of capability design work under the BCDF will happen before that, and some of the contestability work is going to happen before that. But we want to engage with our industry partners and other central government agencies on the detailed design. There's enormous complexity around enterprise resource planning, budgets, how we go about building the skills and capabilities. The government just announced this, as you said, on Monday this week. It needs to be done thoroughly, and we're going to say to them, look, here's not a template. We're just off there to impose it. There's opportunity for input from really important stakeholders, and we need to work through the details, and that's what will be done in the coming months.
I think that's the point that Mr Moriarty's making, is that it is important to be transparent. Ministers have been speaking since coming to government about our intention to change procurement processes, and quite a number of changes have already taken place. This is the next step. We're being transparent about it, and one of the things that then enables is consultation and engagement with stakeholders within the government and external to the government.
I'm just going to move on, but it just seems to me, Secretary, even by perhaps your own admission implicitly, that not much work has been done in terms of engagement and what's going to happen next prior to the announcement. We've got this massive speed, the announcement's on Monday, the industry briefings are tomorrow, we've got talking points, but we don't have much more detail other than what's being announced. And yet there'll be a 2-year process to deliver the new agency.
Senator, it's not possible to engage with
Minister,
people
if I could just
until
finish
you make
my
public your
Can I
intentions.
just finish my question, Minister? So
well, you've asked the same question about five times, and you keep asserting,
Minister,
the process
excuse me,
is
if you could
inadequate.
just
Senators,
respectfully.
I'm just mindful of time
give
as well,
me-
so let's just get back to questions and answers, please.
So if the objective is speed, but it's going to take at least 2 years to get things up and running, doesn't that suggest that procurement in this country is going to grind to a halt?
No, because our ministers have been very clear with us that there must be no break in the pace of our acquisition and sustainment work. So some of that is we're not going to be taking a lot of people offline from CASG, shipbuilding and sustainment and GWIO. They need to drive the programs that they're working on. We're going to set up a task force, and Senator, a lot of work has been done over recent months, but it has been largely in government. So we've been working with the Department of Finance, the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, the Treasurer and the Treasury. We've engaged with some other government departments as well, so that there's already a substantial body of work that has been undertaken, but now is the right time to do the industry engagement.
I just want to move to some questions about the operation of Minister Miles' office. When did Minister Miles first find out the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security was investigating ASD's procurement deals?
Senator, there are significant constraints on what may be said about any of the activities undertaken by the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security. That entity is able to be called, as I haven't sat on Finance and Public Administration for some time, but they may be called to be examined. I think it would be better to put questions about the IGES to the IGES.
Minister, I wasn't actually asking about the ASD and its operation. I was asking, when did Minister Miles first find out? The Inspector General of Intelligence and Security. No, that's a very different question, Minister.
Well, I think the thing is that your question asks officials or myself to confirm the activities of the IGES. I'm not in a position to do that. I'll take your question on notice.
All right. When did Minister Miles learn that the probe involving the Director General Bradshaw and her husband, when did he first find out about that? Was that before or after he signed off on her appointment in November 2024?
Well, again, your question contains assumptions about the activities of the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security. I'm not in a position to confirm those.
You take that on notice, will you, Minister? Or if you could take that on notice.
What shall I take on notice? I've answered.
I'm asking when did Minister Miles learn about the probe involving the Director General Bradshaw and her husband? Was it before or after he signed off on her appointment in November 2024?
I think, Senator, I've tried to indicate to you that there are limitations on what may be canvassed here about the activities of the IGES. There's obviously forums where their work can be discussed, including PJCIS. It's also possible to call them. You are asking a question which makes a set of assumptions about the activities of the IGES. I'm telling you I'm not in a position to confirm them.
I'm actually not asking. I'm asking about Minister Miles, his knowledge, and when he first learned about these matters. At this the time, literally just the time frame.
What's the source of your information about those matters, Senator?
I'm not going to add anything further to my question. Thanks, Minister.
Okay, well, I've answered it.
Will you take that on notice?
It's a question for a different part of the program, Senator, as I've indicated to you. Mr.
Moriarty, I'm happy for you to take this if the Minister's not able to, but if Minister Miles's office is regularly briefed by IGES, as Michael Reid has reported, what did he actually do? Did he ever ask Ms Bradshaw to stand aside? And how many times has he met with her this year? Has he set up a watching brief?
Senator, I'm not aware of the details. You're correct, of course. Mr. Miles does meet with Director General Bradshaw regularly, but I'm not aware of the content of those discussions or what Mr Miles may have asked or required. So I think that it's a matter for Mr Miles rather than officers of the department.
Sure, Minister, can you add anything further to Mr Moriarty's answer?
No, I've indicated to you that I'm not in a position to confirm your assertions about investigations that may or may not be underway.
What I'm asking is about the Minister's understanding, and clearly there's been some public reporting of these matters, and so perhaps I can put it this way to the Minister. Did he learn about this before or after media reporting in the Australian Financial Review over the last month? I mean, and we are referring to some significant procurement challenges within his own portfolio. And I'm being careful with my words, as you can clearly tell, Minister. I'm not making any allegations other than I'm just keen to understand about the Minister's understanding.
The challenge, Senator, with the approach you're taking to questioning and the position that you effectively place myself and officials in is that, as I've repeatedly explained, you are asking me to confirm the activities of another agency that is not represented at the table and, in addition, has a range of other legislative obligations that make it challenging to discuss some of these issues here.
Okay, and just to add a little bit of clarity to the issue that I'm raising, so I'm referring to the Fin Review article, Millions Paid to Business Run by Spy Chief's Husband Under Scrutiny. This was published on the 28th of November, and the first paragraph, just to summarise, is Australian Signals Director General Abigail Bradshaw has been at the centre of an investigation launched by a powerful intelligence watchdog as it queried tens of millions of dollars in contracts awarded to a defence company where her husband was a senior figure. ASD, an intelligence agency specialising in cybersecurity, awarded contracts worth more than $46 million to BAE Systems Digital Intelligence, a subsidiary of the British giant, between March 2020 and June this year, and I'm happy to have this tabled. I'm just reading the online version. So these are serious matters, and we will pursue this, obviously, with the agency.
Well, you could have pursued it with the agency had you managed time so that they could appear here, but I gather... Are you intending to...
Well, Minister, I'm sorry. We made a decision as a committee to prioritise DVA this morning in Veterans Affairs, which is not the normal way that we do. We schedule the program, but we wanted to prioritise Veterans Affairs this morning. So that's why we're up against the clock and we are doing the best that we can do.
We didn't get to them last time, but anyway.
Yeah,
look,
we didn't get to them last time, so there was a deliberate decision.
I'm simply making the point that you could have asked them questions about this directly.
And we will be seeking to do that, I can assure you that. So obviously there's some very serious procurement challenges. Could I ask you to take on notice, Minister, any information that you can provide about the Minister's knowledge of these matters?
Yes. I will indicate, of course, you can ask questions in writing to agencies that don't appear in person. Like, since you have...
Of course.
I understand it's not your intention to have this agency appear this evening, even though you'd originally scheduled them. So you could ask them questions in writing.
That's not correct at all. We are.
Oh, you are going to have them appear?
Yeah, they're scheduled to appear, Minister.
I see.
Now, Chair, I know time is of the essence. I might at this point hand over, because I know Senator Chandler's got some questions next.
Defence? Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Could I hand straight to Senator Chandler? Great.
Oh, I can, but yeah.
Oh, yes, you can, Chair. Through you, Chair.
Thank you. The floor's yours, Senator Chandler.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have some questions for Joint Systems Division, please.
Joint Systems.
Joint
Systems Division in
Systems
CASG.
Division. Okay, on down. Bit of a sigh of relief at the back there.
Good evening, Gavin Rawlins, First Assistant Secretary, Joint Systems Division.
Thank you.
Your name tag there. Excellent. Good on you, Gavin.
Thanks, Mr Rawlins. On the 26th of May this year, the department engaged Pioneer Computers to provide equipment and services to Defence to the tune of about $345,000. Is that correct?
That is not correct. It was $314,000.
My apologies. I was looking at contract CN415690 on AusTender that said it was 345,000-ish.
My apologies. That will be the figure including GST. The figure I've given to you isn't with GST.
Okay. AusTender also specifies that this contract was under...
GST share or not?
Chair, please. I'm trying to ask some questions. AusTender specifies that this contract was under the military services and defence category. What equipment and services are Pioneer providing to Defence under that contract?
So that particular acquisition was completed as part of Project Land 156. During that project, an approach to market took place for a range of sensors to be completed under a particular line of effort. Pioneer Computing, we acquired a handheld sensor device known as a HC2 version 2. We acquired 30 of those under that contract.
What would we be using those handheld sensor devices for? If you can't say that in public session, that's fine, but I'd like to know.
I can flag that we are doing a test and evaluation as part of the project for countering small UAS systems. It is part of a range of products that have been procured during the project. That test and evaluation is happening now.
Okay.
And then the outcomes of that will determine whether or not there are future procurements for this particular project.
Okay. Is the department aware that Jeff Lee is the Managing Director of Pioneer?
I am not aware that he is the Managing Director.
I've looked into this Jeff Lee individual and done a bit of research, and through some archived documents, I'm aware that Jeff Lee has been named as an advisor to the Guangdong Overseas Exchange Association, which operates under the Overseas Chinese Affairs Office in Guangdong Province. These organisations are well-known appendages of the United Front Work Department of the CCP. Is the department aware that one of its contractors for military services has known connections with United Front?
I am not aware of that information. So
It's not a great look, is it, if the department has been outsourcing or engaging with the services with a company with known links to the CCP, is it?
Well, Senator Chandler, I'll allow officials to answer your question, but I wonder if you have information that you might provide it to them. It's difficult for them to respond to information that's not before them.
Well, I've said, Minister, that I've undertaken some research. I can see if it's been provided to me. I can see if that can be tabled, but we might just continue for now. What specialised services does Pioneer provide to Defence more broadly? I understand that there have been a number of contracts with Pioneer.
I am most familiar with Land 156 and this particular sort of acquisition of the handheld device. I do understand in about 2018 there may have been another contract. I just don't have that information available at hand, Senator.
What due diligence or risk assessments were undertaken by Defence before awarding this contract to Pioneer?
The standard acquisition process, the evaluation of a tender, the response by this particular company to that tender has been completed to procure this small number of 30 handheld sensors.
So the standard process, when you go through that standard process, are you looking at ownership arrangements of companies that you would be engaging in?
For this particular acquisition, given the speed and the nature of it, detailed assessments in terms of the full extent of background information isn't applied to the same rigour that would be if there was a complete large-scale acquisition. So it is risk managed. The normal terms and conditions through the contract, the examination of an Australian business number, the compliance to the actual RFT is all considered as part of the acquisition.
So because of the speed and the process that you've gone through to acquire these particular services, I'm guessing that at no point when you're going through the process to award this contract, you've identified any concerns about the linkages between the Managing Director and the United Front.
Senator, we've acquired these particular products as opposed to a service. So we've acquired 30 handheld devices.
My question still stands.
To answer your question, no, there hasn't been a link made from the information that you provided, which I am unaware of.
I understand from recent reporting that the West Australian Government has likewise engaged with Pioneer to supply AI-equipped drones to their local police force. Is the department aware of this?
Senator, I might take that question.
Thank you, Ms Perkins.
Deputy Secretary Security and Estate. Yes, I have seen WA Government's response on those queries.
Does the Defence have any concerns about a state government utilising China-linked surveillance equipment?
Look, I'd make 2 points. First of all, I saw the comments by the relevant WA Government Minister that spoke to the rigorous security and penetration testing of those devices. I think that is a matter for the WA Government and their cyber security around those devices. I'd like to just make another point to my colleague's testimony, which is important. Land 156 is an important project, and the test and evaluation activity is purchasing devices so we can test a capability. As we were to move to the procurement stage of a more enduring solution, it would be my expectation, and I know my colleagues in CASG will be working with us on that, for a full security risk assessment, DISPA membership of a Defence Industry Security Program membership of companies who will be working with an enduring way. But the nature of this trial and evaluation is really taking devices that we'll put into a test bed rather than introducing them into the defence ecosystem.
So you don't perform any security risk assessment of trial products?
So this is an important point. In this instance, there's been a security risk assessment around this activity. This isn't entering into a long-term contract with a company integrated into our system. It's purchasing devices that will go into a test bed being managed, not by this company. They are off-the-shelf devices, 30 off-the-shelf devices that we'll test.
So do you consider at any point in the scoping for a project like this the potential of buying devices from a supplier that otherwise Defence wouldn't want to be engaging with?
Senator, I won't comment on the supplier. Our concern is the overall security of connections into our system, and we've talked in this committee a lot about how we apply the Commonwealth security risk assessment to devices and the ways in which we make those assessments. And as I said, this is a small test and evaluation activity. These devices won't connect to defence systems. They'll be managed quite separately.
Is the department aware that one of Pioneer's subsidiary companies is on a panel to provide drone services to the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water?
I was not aware of that.
I'm not aware of that.
Have any of our national security agencies raised concerns with Defence about its use of Pioneer to provide military and defence services or other services more broadly?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
I mean, I think this is pretty concerning. I mean, most Australians would be listening to this testimony here this evening and find it pretty unacceptable that, you know, well-meaning public servants in charge of keeping our country safe are happy to outsource, even to develop a test and trial capability, outsource part of that to a business that has direct links to the CCP. Given the information that I've provided you today with this line of questioning, is the department going to reconsider its contracts with Pioneer?
Senator Chandler, you haven't provided very much information at all to officials. I'm sure that if you have information, you're not willing to provide it in this forum. You may wish to provide it by other means.
Certainly.
But at this stage, you have asserted that such a link exists based on your own research, which you have not provided. I'm sure that members of the department would be pleased to discuss it with you privately if
Yes.
that is of assistance to you.
I think so. Could I have a response to that question, though? Will the department rather be reconsidering any of these contracts?
At this point in time, no. The test and evaluation that is undertaken as part of this project isn't completed yet. When that evaluation in that very controlled environment is examined, then we'll look at the next steps for this particular project.
Okay.
But Senator, I mean, security information and developments that are brought to our attention are always taken into account, and but the government has, you know, policy. There's a whole of government policy on autonomous systems, on drones, where we won't buy them from, where it is agreeable or allowable to. So we'll take any information, and that will go into the framework on which we approach this and anything else involving this company, if we can get to the bottom of it.
So under current government procurement policies, is there anything preventing government agencies from engaging with businesses that have links to the CCP?
Well, yes, but our Defence Industry Security Program has some criteria which steer companies in very firm directions about, you know, the sorts of arrangements, the ownership considerations, all of those matters. So the people who do our DISP, and Mr. West might want to talk to this a bit more. You know, yes, companies can engage with us, and we also have our own views about the sorts of places that we will source material.
I'll just add to what the Secretary said. Peter West, First Assistant Secretary of Defence Security. As part of the Defence Industry Security Program, we conduct a thorough foreign ownership control and influence check of all companies applying for DISP membership. And obviously where we identify high risks, that is conveyed to contract managers, and it is their job to consider how best to mitigate them, and in some cases where those risks are unmitigatable, to not engage with those companies as part of any contracting process.
But Mr. West and Ms. Perkins, you might want to chime in here as well, because I don't want to verbal you, but am I correct in saying that those sorts of processes wouldn't have been undertaken in relation to this kind of contract?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Well,
I just have...
if that's the case...
Sorry, I thought the Chair was calling me to time. I just have one further very quick line of questioning that may be very, very quick, depending on the answers, about the government PsyQuantum contract. PsyQuantum, Secretary.
Off you go, Senator.
Oh, sorry, it's just you, Mr. Moriarty. All good.
No, we've got a professor here as well.
Apologies. Hello. Was Defence consulted at all in the lead up to the engagement of PsyQuantum to build the world's first quantum computer in Brisbane?
Thank you, Senator, for your question. Tanya Munro, Chief Defence Scientist. As I've given in previous testimony at previous estimates, we participated in a whole-of-government process to provide advice. DSTG also provided a technology risk assessment, as we do for all defence acquisition projects, and that all formed part of the calculus for government decision-making.
And apologies if I'm going over prior ground, were those risk assessments conducted prior to PsyQuantum being engaged or subsequent to?
I would have to come back to you with the precise dates because it's now quite some time ago, but it was part of government consideration.
Okay. PsyQuantum will almost certainly own the IP that's being developed in relation to the computer in Brisbane, rather than providing us, the government, with direct control of quantum technology. Is that correct?
That's really a question for DISA, as they did the commercial negotiations.
Did Defence secure any clauses in relation to those commercial obligations to ensure that we can maintain intellectual property for critical defence applications that might be used by virtue of the quantum computer?
That's a question I'd prefer to defer to colleagues in other parts of the department who are more engaged in the commercial negotiations.
Are they here?
Deeps.
Sorry, who's here?
Senator Chandler, we might usefully take that on notice.
Okay.
I'm not sure we will have the person here to answer that.
Sure. If that's the case, apologies, I'm just checking where I need to get up to.
I think Sarah Henderson also had some questions as well. Sorry.
No, I think we might come back, but I think given that it might be best if I put these questions on. No, one last question. When was the last time you engaged with DISA on the PsyQuantum contract?
There's been no recent engagement.
When we say recent, Professor
Certainly
Munro?
not since the last time we discussed this at Senate estimates, not this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now,
Thank you.
Senator Henderson, now before you do that, just want to let people know we've agreed as a committee to release Defence Housing Australia and ASPI as well, okay? Now, the call's yours.
Thanks,
and then I'll
Chair.
go to Senator Shoebridge.
Very conscious of the clock, so I will again try to race through these as quickly as I can. Just wanting to pick up one question in relation to IGES. Minister or Mr Moriarty, has Minister Miles been informed of any IGES investigations in the last 12 months, or does he not get briefed on IGES investigations?
I'll take that on notice, Senator Henderson.
Thanks, Minister. I just want to move to the issue of Ukraine. Minister Miles flagged in question time an additional package of support for the Ukraine. Was he referring to the $50 million contribution to the Pearl, which has been reported by Latika Burke in the Nightly, or is there a further contribution coming?
Senator Burnett, National Policy. The government has not yet made announcements on any contribution Australia might make to Pearl or other additional support to Ukraine.
So in relation to what Minister Miles flagged in question time, can you provide any further information?
Not at this stage, Senator.
I'm just worried, and there's obviously the ambassador here, the Ukrainian ambassador, has also raised some concerns about the extent of Australia's support for Ukraine. Just wanting to ask, and maybe this is to you, Minister, $50 million in the scheme of a $50 billion defence budget. Is that all that's going to be coming or going to be flowing to the people of Ukraine under these horrific circumstances?
Thank you, Senator Henderson. I think you'll understand that I am not going to preempt any announcement that the Minister might make, although, as you've already indicated, he did say quite recently that very shortly we will be announcing our next package of support for Ukraine. We've been very clear that we stand with Ukraine in their defence of their country in the face of an illegal and immoral invasion. We continue to work with them to understand their requirements and, of course, have made some important contributions to their efforts, including, of course, the Abrams tanks. I think officials can give you an update on where we're up to in contributions to date, but I'm not in a position to preempt any announcement that might be made by the Deputy Prime
Well, obviously Ukraine has made some very public requests for Hawkeyes and for more Bushmasters. Where is that at, Minister? Obviously there's a lot of tension at the moment in terms of the government's decision at this point not to deliver any further material assistance this year.
Senator, I think I can't really add to my answer. I understand your keenness to have me preempt any announcement by the Deputy Prime Minister, but I'm just not in a position to do that this evening on his behalf.
So there is an imminent announcement?
I'll repeat the words of the Deputy Prime Minister, which is very shortly we will be announcing our next package of support for Ukraine.
Okay, and is it in the vicinity of $50 million?
I'm not intending to speculate about what that package might be, Senator.
So, look, I just guess I want to raise concerns about the fact that Ukraine has been asking all year for assistance. We've got export licences to Israel which have ground to a halt. Japan has raised significant issues, as have been all over the press today, and these are matters that we will explore tomorrow. But I just want to understand that it's obviously incredibly important, Minister, for the government to stand strongly by its democratic allies around the world at this very difficult time. Minister Miles has indicated an announcement is forthcoming. Can you add any more to what the government is doing to support our most important allies?
CDF can provide
Senator
a response.
Henderson, I would just observe, of course, the Australian government has provided $1.5 billion worth of assistance so far. Through the course of this year, we have continued training Ukrainian troops. So you might recall under Operation Kudu, where we provide direct training to Ukraine to help uplift their land-based capability in particular. We deployed one of our airborne early warning and control aircraft, the E-7, that operated from Poland until October this year. That was providing vital support over a key logistics gateway that is used to provide equipment into Ukraine as part of that effort. We continue to have people deployed in Europe who are directly assisting the work that is occurring to enable Ukraine to achieve the outcome. So there has continued to be significant assistance being provided, particularly by the Defence and ADF people who are deployed to do so.
Admiral, thank you. Look, we were briefed by the Ukrainian ambassador, this committee, I should say, and I just want to...
Hang on, yeah, exactly, sorry. Is that the confidential? Yeah, just be careful, Senator, that was a private briefing.
Oh, no, well, actually, sorry, just to correct that was posted by the Ukrainian ambassador.
No, but let's just not go there.
Twitter. I'm not going to go to the substance of the briefing.
These are private matters of the committee, let's
I'm
not
not going to go to the substance of the briefing, but
well,
the fact
don't
that
even raise it in a public sense,
I'm not
please.
going to do that, Chair, but I'm just saying that we've had a briefing. But going back to my concern, Admiral, about the assistance, there's a lot of tension at the moment. There hasn't been any new assistance to Ukraine, funding assistance this year. Why has this taken so long? Maybe that's a matter for the Minister rather than yourself.
Well, Senator, I think we continually engage with Ukrainian counterparts to understand what they require, and of course we also have been focused on delivering on our existing commitments. Admiral has started to step through with you some of the activities that have been undertaken, and of course that has included training support. It's also included political level engagement, and it's included the delivery of the tanks as promised, which we can talk through where that's up to.
All right, I'll move to another issue if I can very quickly. Has the government provided ASC with the scope of the first Collins class life of time extension, and will it be a full life of time extension as planned? commencing in 2026?
Senator, Deputy Secretary David Hanley and Naval Shipbuilding and Sustainment. Could you just repeat the question?
Certainly. Has the government provided ASC with the scope of the first Collins-class life of time extension? So will it be a full life of time extension as planned, commencing, I understand, in 2026?
Senator John Chandler, First Assistant Secretary of Submarines. So I think your question is around what the government has approved in terms of the Collins life of type extension.
That's right.
So
yes.
the government approvals at the moment include design of a range of modifications, procurement of initial long lead items and initial implementation of the life of type extension project.
And does that include a new main motor, diesel engines and generators?
So, Senator, the design work includes the design work for replacement propulsion system and diesel generators. The initial long lead procurement items include those items. The initial implementation, we're working through the planning for that activity, so that is yet to be finalised.
Senator, so you don't have any, and I just correct myself as life of type extension, apologies. So you don't have any further information about that at all?
I might just see if the Chief of Navy wants to comment there first.
Thank you.
Good evening, Senator. Vice Admiral Hammond, Chief of Navy. There's been no change to the program of record with respect to life of type extension. All 6 submarines, first one commencing middle of 2026, and each activity will be based upon the material condition assessment of each submarine to go through that program. And there'll be a series of updates provided to government, including a new one next year.
And will that take the 2 years, I understand, as planned?
At least 2 years, consistent with the full cycle docking program to date, Senator.
So when you say at least 2 years, so what would be the precise time?
Senator, that'll depend upon the package that is designed for each submarine. Each submarine has been used differently, different amount of sea time, different upgrades through life. So it'll be a bespoke activity. The full package will be informed by a full condition assessment, one submarine at a time. HMAS Farncombe is still operational and will go through that full condition assessment next year and provide updated advice to government ahead of the first full cycle docking.
So can I put to you that the submarines won't last another 10 years without the full extension? And this is supposed to start soon, isn't it? So why don't you have an understanding of more details?
Senator, this isn't a question of lasting a full operating cycle. It's being optimised for a full operating cycle, and it's got to take into account a number of different conditions. I would offer that the full cycle docking process that we do right now is like a frame-off restoration. I was recently on board Rankin, which is going through that program. Sheen has completed that program. When you step on board Sheen, and she's at sea at the moment, it's like stepping on a brand new submarine. So each submarine is in slightly different condition. They've got different upgrades through life, and we'll provide updated advice to government to inform the full scope of Farncombe's life type extension. But it remains our intent to conduct a full life type extension on all 6 submarines, subject to future government decisions.
And so how long will, therefore, that will make the submarines operational then?
The reference is the full cycle docking, which is nominally a 24-month period with overruns. I think Mr Chandler can speak to that, but again, it will depend upon the final work package for each submarine that is yet to be fully agreed with government.
But with the plan and acknowledging that the current government approvals are only for initial implementation, but the plan to life extend all Collins-class submarines is around, proceeding by a LOTE full cycle docking, we'll call it, followed by a 10-year operating cycle for each submarine, and that would see the last Collins-class submarine operating well into the 2040s.
And what about the combat system side? So can you just explain what is going to be done in relation to the combat systems?
So the way that we would describe the approach to extending the life of the Collins-class, Senator, is that yes, there is a LOTE project, but the LOTE project is looking to mitigate the risks to extending each submarine by one full operating cycle. That project needs to be delivered integrated with effective ongoing sustainment, the corrosion management and so on, and it needs to be delivered alongside selected capability upgrades. Those capability upgrades primarily occur through a set of projects that are the C1439 suite of projects, and those projects are framed to upgrade systems like the sonar suite, the communications suite, the electronic support measures suite. On top of that, we have armaments cooperative programs with the United States have been in place for over 2 decades.
Okay.
And those programs upgrade their combat systems on a drumbeat.
So if you can't confirm the scope of the works, isn't there a risk that this won't last the decade as required? So, I mean, I'm just go back to that question. It just seems very vague. Given this is about to begin, surely you can provide details about the scope.
Senator, I think both Chief of Navy and Mr Chandler have described this is no different to any standard upgrade package we do for both surface ships and submarines. We first do a survey of the existing ship and the condition it's in. We then articulate the work scope. We get the necessary information from those that are doing the work, the supplier, and then we schedule the work, and then we start mud and take. And that's no different to how we do any other ship statement, including large upgrades.
And what about the issues with the corrosion of the submarines?
So they are identified as part of that survey work. I think Chief of Navy articulated that we go frame by frame. We understand where the corrosion is. We disassemble where we need to disassemble. If we need to disassemble more through that survey process, that's what we do. But that takes a period of time, and then we put the package of work together.
Okay, well, look, I might need to put my other questions on this on notice, so thank you. Chair, thank you.
No, just to be clear, is that going to be it from the coalition's end then?
Let me talk to you in a minute.
Okay.
That's the
Well,
plan.
I'm going to hand over to Senator Shoebridge then. Senator Shoebridge, you have the call.
Thanks, Chair. I've got some questions about weapons exports. My first question is, do we have any current military export permits with Sudan? Between 2017 and 2023, there were 9 active permits. And I'm just wondering how many we have now.
Senator David Nuttall, First Assistant Secretary, Defence Trade, Regulation and Industrial Collaboration. I think your question was, do we have any permits for Sudan? Is that correct?
And noting that between 2017 and 2023, there were 9 active permits?
I'd have to take that on notice. I don't have that data with me.
All right. Well, I mean, Sudan's in the middle of an appalling war driven by its neighbours and others in the region. And you're saying you're not sure whether or not we're exporting weapons to Sudan?
As I said, Senator, I don't have that data with me.
Well, are there any export permits to Sudan?
I think I've just answered the question. I don't have that data with me.
Well, you say you don't, but do you know? I mean, you're responsible for exports. You surely would know whether or not we're exporting weapons into a conflict like Sudan.
I think I said I'll take that on notice.
Okay, you don't know. You're taking on notice because you don't know?
I think Senator, you know that officials aren't required to provide a reason. The
Well,
official
they
has
are,
taken it on
actually.
notice.
They are required. You can't just say, I'll take it on notice.
I believe that officials may take any matter on notice so as to ensure that they provide accurate information to the Senate.
But also, if you'd listened to the Chair, Minister, officials are required to provide what evidence and what knowledge they have when they're sitting at the table. So again, I'm just going to ask Mr Nockels, do you know if Australia has any defence export permits with Sudan?
Senator, I think I've just said I don't, and that's why I would take that on notice.
You now say you don't. All right. You do know that the UN has found that the United Arab Emirates is diverting weapons to the RSF militia in Sudan. Are you aware of that? If not you, is anyone in defence aware of this?
Senator, as we've discussed before, apologies, Hugh Jeffrey, Deputy Secretary, Strategy, Policy, Industry. As we've discussed before, we do keep all export permits under contemporaneous review.
Have you reviewed?
I've been familiar with the reports that you mentioned in relation to the ongoing conflict in Sudan. In the case of all extant permits, we'll be looking at those. We'll be looking at decisions that we've made in relation to export permits and review them if circumstances change.
Have you reviewed any weapons permits to Sudan as a result, or to the UAE, as a result of the UN's finding that the UAE is diverting weapons to the RSF militia in Sudan?
Senator, you'll forgive me, we've had this conversation before. A permit does not equate to a weapon. A permit can equate to a range of things. So when you're asking me questions about weapons permits, I will refer you to our previous evidence around the fact that we grant permits for a range of controlled goods, which could be weapons in and of themselves. It could be,
have you reviewed any weapons,
items.
any military export permits, however you want to describe them, that have been granted to either Sudan or the United Arab Emirates since the UN found that the UAE is diverting weapons to the RSF militia in Sudan?
Senator, we will take on notice in relation to the question that Dr. David Nockels took from you in relation to the question on exports to, or export permits in relation to Sudan.
Well, I've asked about both Sudan and the UAE. You would know, I assume you're the head of the area, which is not massive, which does this work. You would know whether or not there is any review of existing export permits for control goods to Sudan or the UAE. And if you do know that, you should answer it. That's your job in estimates. And it's the inquirement as the chair read out at the beginning. Do you know if there's a review? I'm asking you, Mr. Nockels.
So, Senator, when we look at, and as Mr. Jeffrey just said, when we look at any permit application, we look at them on a case-by-case basis. And as Mr. Jeffrey said, a permit does not equate to a weapon. We look at controlled goods on the DSGL, or the Defence Strategic Goods.
That really wasn't my question. My question was, have you done a review? And you're just giving me the same answer 7 times that I've already heard seven times in 7 different estimates. He's deliberately trying to chew up time.
He's not, but you're also asking the same
unhelpful.
question 7 different times too.
Well, I'm asking about a
just let the
review of the
witness.
permits. I don't want a history lecture on the permits. Is there a review of the permits?
So, Senator, I was seeking to respond to your question. So there's a range of ways that we manage permit applications. We run due diligence over the application. So that is comprehensive checks on the potential end user, their compliance history, links to any high-risk jurisdictions. We also engage across the Commonwealth in terms of intelligence holdings, so that's at a whole-of-government level. So we'll take advice from partner agencies in terms of their reporting, and potentially that might even involve international partners as well. We have a potential then to use either an end-use or non-transfer certificate that goes with the application, and so that provides us an opportunity to seek confirmation from the end user that they will work to specific constraints that we might have around that, which would obviously mean export to a third country, and then obviously potentially permit conditions might be attached to the permit that we provide, and there might be sort of limiting permit parameters, length of time, number of items, etc. So there are a range of ways that we would manage a particular permit application, and then, as I think we have provided testimony in previous estimates, as circumstances change, then potentially we'll need to keep things under review.
Have you undertaken a review of any export permits of controlled goods to either Sudan or the UAE since the UN found that the UAE is diverting weapons to the RSF militia? Have you undertaken a review?
So, Senator, I think I've answered the question.
No, you
in the
haven't,
sense that we
Mr. Knuckles.
constantly keep things under scrutiny and review, in the sense that if circumstances change and there's a requirement to go back and
well, there's kind of a genocide happening, so circumstances have changed. Have you undertaken a review of weapons exports either going to Sudan, where there's a genocide going on, or going to the UAE, which is diverting weapons to a genocide in Sudan? Have you undertaken a review in light of that? And if you can't say that, and we just get this discursive non-answer because it's embarrassing because there's weapons going into a genocide, just tell me that.
Senator, if it helps you, I will say that I have not directed a review. I think Mr. Knuckles' answer is not an attempt to obscure this
No
point.
review. All right, I get it. No review.
Ask me,
no review.
If you could let me finish, Senator Shoebridge. The point I think we're trying to make is we discuss these issues all the time. It is the legislative criteria on which our export control regime works means that the kinds of questions you're asking us happen as a matter of course. If there is extant permits, we need to keep them under contemporaneous review, and that's the way it works.
I know the Coalition wants to get to other agencies. There's no review. You haven't asked for a review, and there's no review.
What we're saying to you is that if there is a permit, Senator Shoebridge, they're always being reviewed against contemporary conditions.
Well, have they been reviewed against contemporary conditions? Has anyone looked at the fact of the genocide?
I think I've just...
No, let me finish. Has anyone looked at the fact of the genocide, the fact of the UAE feeding weapons into the genocide, the fact that the UAE is one of our largest destinations for exports of weapons, and the fact that we also had previously, and we probably still do, have export permits to Sudan, and there's a genocide going on? Has anyone looked at those facts?
Well, Senator, you're asserting a range of facts there. I think, obviously the question on genocides are
obscene levels of killing you can see from satellite levels.
Important one, and we wouldn't, in answering the question, necessarily endorse your description.
Well, what about the piles of bodies? Well, put to one side genocide. The piles of bodies you can see from a satellite level as a result of the killing, the mass killing that's been undertaken by the RSF that the UAE is arming. Let's say it's not genocide. Let's just say the piles of bodies you can see from the satellites. In light of that, have you done a review?
Senator, I think we've answered your question.
Have you done a review since we can see those piles of bodies? From a force that we know is being armed by the UAE, who Australia has large-scale weapons exports to. Have you done a review?
We have discussed these issues.
Have you done a review?
In the course of our work, and we always engage on ensuring, we always work on ensuring that where there are extant permits, current permits, that we review them against contemporary control.
Between the 1st of January and just the 31st of March this year, Australia gave the green light for 8 defence military goods permits to the UAE. How many are there currently with the UAE?
Senator, again, are you saying that they're military export permits? Or are you saying that they're
permits
export
issued
permits
by
for
your
controlled
office.
goods?
You can call them whatever you like. For the rest of this, I'm going to call them export permits, being the permits that are both Part 1 and Part 2. Some are for lethal goods going to military. Some can be used for military purpose. I'm, for going forward, going to call them export permits issued by your office.
And some are non-lethal and completely unrelated.
Yeah, like the non-lethal
Military
F-35
items.
parts. I get it. Between the 1st of January and the 31st of March 2025, your department has greenlighted 8 of these export permits to the UAE. How many are current with the UAE?
Well, Senator, I'd have to take that data question on notice. I don't have that specifically with me at the moment. I know that we are under the government's requirement to publish more data from a transparency perspective. We've been doing that throughout the last 3 or so quarters of the last financial year. I just don't have that data on hand. I would, though.
So you came here in light of what we've seen
Mr. Jeffrey's
of
comments.
the killing in Sudan, the industrial scale killing in Sudan, in light of the knowledge and the repeated reporting of the record levels of defence exports to the UAE. You came here without any preparation for questions about military exports or export permits to the UAE. You didn't come with any preparation for that. Is that what you're telling me? No numbers, no details.
So, Senator, we published that data, which I think may be the data that you're quoting.
In March.
We issue about 3,500 permits per annum.
I'm asking you about the UAE.
I don't have all of the detail or data on every single
country. Not only
country,
have you come here with,
or the 3,500 permits that we issue on an annual basis.
No details about defence permits, about export permits to the UAE. You make it pretty clear that even in light of the obscene levels of killing and the known links that I put to you, you haven't even done a review. Now, Minister, are you comfortable with that? Are you comfortable? I mean, you've probably seen the images, the piles of bodies, the killing by the RSF, the clear evidence that the UAE is arming the RSF. We have an unknown number of export permits to the UAE, and they haven't even done a review. Are you comfortable with that?
Senator, I think the officials have explained to you that permits are in a state of constant review, and I think that the challenge that you are encountering is that officials have explained to you that that's the case, and you appear to be drawing us a distinction that suggests that they're not
reviewing. Because they've said they haven't reviewed them.
Well, I'm not sure that is the evidence that
evidence,
Mr. Jeffrey gave you.
My evidence is that I'm confident that we're applying sufficient scrutiny to extant permits.
Which you don't know how many there are of, and you don't know what's been exported.
Senator,
but you're confident that there's sufficient scrutiny to the unknown number of permits for unknown goods going to the UAE, given the fact that the UAE is actually arming a genocide in Sudan. But you're comfortable with that?
Senator, we've taken the question on notice that we will we'll answer the question in relation to the number of permits. And again, I'll take you back to the process around the nature of permits.
Well, it's not only the RSF that the UAE is arming. The UAE, being a equal opportunity weapons/disaster armour, is also arming the RSF, the SAF, the Sudanese armed forces. Are you aware of that they're arming both sides?
Senator, I'm familiar with the issue. I mean, I'm aware of the issue around the Sudanese civil war and the fact that the Sudanese government maintains a number of supply relationships, and as do Sudanese militia.
And are you aware that one of the UAE firms that's supplying goods to the Sudanese armed forces, in this case armoured personnel vehicles, is Calidus? Calidus. Are you aware that that's one of the UAE weapons manufacturers that is providing APVs to the Sudanese armed forces? You're aware of that?
I'm aware of the issues that you're raising.
And are you aware that Australian weapons manufacturer EOS has just signed a deal to provide remote weapon systems to Calidus for their APVs, the APVs that are found on the ground in Sudan being used in a conflict which is seeing piles of bodies on the ground? Are you aware of that?
Senator, I'm aware of the news report, and as you know, if any Australian firm wishes to export controlled goods to a foreign country, they'll require a permit.
So given that EOS has just signed a deal to provide remote weapon systems to Calidus, and given Calidus is sending its armoured personnel vehicles into Sudan in that appalling conflict, have you reviewed EOS's export permits in light of that?
Senator, again, any Australian company exporting would require a permit to do so. As we have testified before this committee before, if we had any concerns, if we do have any concerns, that in granting or in approving an application for an export permit, that so doing would risk violation of the criteria under which the legislation operates, then we wouldn't export the permit.
Are you aware that another UAE company called NIMR, N-I-M-R, provides their AJBAN vehicle to the RSF? So we've got Calidus providing it to the Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, and we've got NIMR, N-I-M-R, providing it to the RSF. Are you aware of that weapons flow coming from the UAE?
Not that particular instance, but I'm aware of the issues that you raise.
Are you aware that EOS also has an agreement with NIMR, N-I-M-R, to provide their remote weapons system to the ABJAM vehicle? So EOS is, again, another equal opportunity weapons supplier, potentially providing to both the RSF and the SAF. Are you aware of that?
Senator, again, I think you're drawing a too long a bow there. If Australian companies are exporting, they require a permit and it'll be subject to the same process that we've explained to you before. That process is specifically designed to ensure that we apply a export control regime to ensure that there are no exports of potentially lethal items that would be in contravention to Australia's national interests.
I think we can call a remote weapons system a lethal item. Even Foreign Minister Wong might admit that a remote weapons system is lethal. Do you think a remote weapons system is lethal,
So,
Mr. Jeffries?
Senator, at the last estimates, I think you raised a similar sort of point about EOS. And I think one of the ways we responded in testimony was to indicate that EOS is an international company. And I would just reiterate the point that Mr. Jeffrey made a short while ago, and that is that if a company in Australia is seeking to export goods that may be on the DSGL, that they would need to come for a permit. And therefore, as Mr. Jeffrey said, we will run through the normal process. And depending on the destination, we may, as I explained earlier in my testimony this evening, apply a range of conditions, quite specific conditions about what could happen with that item as it's exported and the fact that it cannot then be exported to a third country.
And has anyone brought EOS in and asked them for assurances, or otherwise, that their remote weapon systems are not being put on vehicles in the UAE and then exported into the appalling conflict in Sudan? Have you done that? Have you brought them in and asked them?
So, Senator, as I said,
have you brought them in and asked them?
We have a range of ways of ensuring that our understanding of how these items might be exported and how they are used. We engage specifically with the company.
You haven't brought them in and asked them. I get it.
So we
explicitly
engage with the company every time that they might come to us with
have you brought them in and asked
application. And so if we felt that there were issues in the way that we were uncertain about how that particular item might be used, we would then engage and we would provide an RFI to the company, request for information to then get more detail
I'm not
on
asking
how
about
they
the theoretical
might.
process, Mr. Nockels. I'm asking, have you brought them in and asked them? Have you asked EOS about their arrangements with NIMR and Calidus for provision of remote weapons system, given the fear that they will turn up in Sudan? Have you asked them?
So, Senator, I think I've answered the question in how we manage
I'm not
permits.
interested in the process. I'm asking if you asked EOS. Have you brought them in and asked them?
So when, as I just explained a second ago, when a company applies for a permit, we would then potentially ask them a range of questions about how that...
I'm not asking about potentials. I'm not asking about the theory. I'm not asking about the process. Mr. Nockels, is quite late. I'm asking whether or not you've asked EOS.
Well, I was just trying to answer your question.
No, you weren't. Have you asked EOS?
I think the challenge here, Senator Shoebridge, is officials have on many occasions told you that they are not in a position to confirm specific details about the permits in question. You are asking them to confirm the nature of the permit.
No, I'm asking them if they've made an inquiry of EOS. It's a pretty straightforward query. Have you made an inquiry of EOS?
Senator, as I said, when we deal with companies and they apply for permits, we engage with them.
This is some sort of Groundhog Day. Have you made an inquiry of
Answering
EOS?
your question, Senator, in terms of permits.
Well, look, I get it's embarrassing you haven't asked EOS, given what we've seen happening on the ground. I get it's embarrassing that EOS is working with companies that are arming both sides of the appalling conflict in Sudan. I get it's awkward. But did anyone at the Team Australia Defence Expo at Dubai, at the recent Dubai Arms Fair, which had both Defence and EOS, did anyone at Team Defence Australia ask them when they were sharing a tent at a Dubai Arms Fair just recently? Did you
Senator,
ask EOS then?
I think Senator McAllister has said we're not going to go into individual permits and how they relate to individual companies. As you know, we have commercial in confidence obligations in respect to our companies.
Genocide's commercial in confidence.
That's point one. Point two is, of course, your statements here make a whole range of assumptions, which I think are important to just underline that the absence of a conversation with a particular company does not mean that we don't have concerns. It may mean that there is not an export of which we have a concern.
Well, then we finally get the answer. The absence of a conversation with a particular company. I appreciate we finally got the answer.
I'm just putting it in hypothetical. It's not an answer in that way, Senator. Don't put words in my mouth.
Yeah, I'm mindful of time.
What we are
Senator.
talking
Have you got
about
other
here
questions on other topics
is you're making an assumption if there was not a direct engagement with a particular company, that therefore that by definition we're not engaging on a particular risk.
Well, what you could do, see, Mr. Jeffries, you could answer this.
It may mean that we do not think there is a
You could
risk.
answer this problem. You could say, we have reviewed the export permits for EOS. We've reviewed it in light of the appalling conflict in Sudan. And having reviewed them, we are satisfied of X or Y or Z. But you see, you haven't reviewed them. And that's awkward. And because you haven't reviewed them, we get these long, discursive,
Senator, that's not my
procedural
testimony.
answers from Mr. Knuckles.
Senator,
Well, have you reviewed them?
That's not my testimony. I said that I am confident we haven't conducted sufficient scrutiny.
While we're on weapons exports, and we're getting record levels of disclosure from this government, could I ask about Part 1 and Part 2 export licences, defence permits? I asked for a breakdown of current Part 1 and Part 2 permits by country in question reference, I think, number 74. And Defence said a historical breakdown of these permits in the format requested is not centrally held. Now, first of all, that's not an answer, and whether it's centrally held or not isn't really the issue. But I wasn't seeking an historical breakdown. I was asking for a current Part 1 and Part 2 permits by country, and why haven't you given them?
Sorry, Senator, is this in relation to a particular quant
Question on
or
notice.
FOI?
It's a question on notice. At the last round of estimates, I asked for a breakdown of current Part 1 and Part 2 permits by country, and you said a historical breakdown of these permits in the format requested is not centrally held. 2 points. Whether it's centrally held or not is not the question. If you have the material, you should provide it. And secondly, I wasn't asking for an historical breakdown, just the current Part 1 and Part 2 permits by country. Why won't you give it?
Senator Shoebridge, I think officials are trying to locate the quan in question. Do you have a number, just so that we're all talking about
Portfolio
the same
question
thing?
reference number 74.
Great, thanks.
To 25-26 supplementary budget estimates, type of question written 16 October 2025.
Thank you.
Well, I think we've answered the question to you, Senator.
No.
Well,
Is there some alternate universe happening here, Mr. Knuckles? I said, can you provide a breakdown of extant, meaning current, defence export permits as of November 2025, broken down by country and by Part 1 or Part 2? And you said a historical breakdown of these permits in the format requested is not centrally held. So first of all, whether it's centrally held or not is irrelevant. And secondly, I wasn't asking for an historical breakdown. I was asking for the current ones. Why won't you provide
well, when you
the
say
export permits as of November 1, 2025, broken down by country and by Part 1 or Part 2?
Well, as we say in our response, Senator, we publish this type of data. One of the changes to the way we publish the data is to break it up into Part 1 and Part 2, and that is published.
But it's not by country, it's by weird region. I'm asking by country.
I think you'll find that the current way that we are representing the data on the website is by country. That was one of the changes that we made.
Pointing to another database
reporting.
is not answering the question. Will you now, Minister, you surely accept there should be some basic level of transparency, and you surely accept that if asking something that has been provided repeatedly before, breakdown by country, Part 1 and Part 2, it was answered in the 24-25 budget estimates in answer to question 106. It's been provided before. Surely the most basic level of scrutiny from your government should be able to at least provide what you provided last year. Why won't they?
So, Senator, I think I've sought to answer your question in that the way that we currently are publishing the data on a quarterly basis is breaking it down by country and by Part 1 or Part 2 of the DSGL. I think you are seeking something that goes back some years, and the way the data has worked.
No, extant current defence exports.
Well, that's my point, that some of these permits may have been issued up to 4 or 5 years ago, and in the way that we have the current data, we haven't set it up in a way other than the last 12 months or so to go back that far.
So you can't identify, well, so you can't have it both ways, Mr Nockels. You can't say the current defence, the live defence exports are under constant review and you're always looking to see whether or not there's human rights or other issues, you've got it under constant review, and then when I ask you about them, you say you don't even know which ones are current. You can't have it both ways. It makes no sense. Well, maybe you can because we live in some alternate universe where Labor and the Coalition agree on this. But in a rational world, you can't have it both ways.
So again, Senator, I think you are putting words in my mouth. I was seeking to explain how the data is represented in the current way that we collate it and in the way that we've changed the collection of the data.
You see, Mr Nockels, if you can't give me a list, of what the current export permits are by country, how the bloody hell can you review those current export permits to see whether or not they are in breach of our obligations not to further a genocide or otherwise offensive to our laws or standards? If you can't even say which they are.
Yeah, Senator, look, I think, as you know, the data we provide publicly on the website we have sought to expand at government direction, including in response to your questions to this committee, over several years. We've sought to increase as much as possible the transparency we apply to the export process. However, as you know,
thank
Senator,
God there's a roof and lightning's not coming.
As you know, Senator, that commitment to transparency also has to exist in parallel with a commitment to our Australian exporters who require a degree of
Minister, last year your government could give this data.
Confidentiality.
Last year your government could give this data. This year you say you can't. Your department is saying you now have record levels of transparency. I got this exact data last year. Minister, why can't you provide the same data this year that you provided last year?
I think Senator officials have sought to explain the limitations on what they can and can't provide from a technical perspective. I understand your interest in
seeing if we're arming a genocide. Yeah, I get it.
Trying to understand the nature of the permits. Perhaps Mr Jeffrey can give some consideration
can we just stop?
to what could
We're just going to stop and we're going to move because it's time. We're going to move on to something else. But I think the record will show this obscenely bureaucratic, appalling response in circumstances where I'm concerned, my party, the Greens, is concerned about the appalling level, the industrial scale level of killing in Sudan, and this response from your department, Minister, refusing to provide basic scrutiny, refusing to answer questions about Australian weapons exports to the UAE, obfuscation and denial, does your government know credit? And you surely know that, don't you?
Senator, you have had it explained to you on so many occasions that officials are not in a position to talk to you about individual permits.
I've asked about
the majority of
numbers.
your questions this evening have included assumptions about permit holders, the nature of the products they may be seeking to export, the export destinations and their commercial arrangements with other parties. You have repeatedly asked officials implicitly to confirm those assumptions, and for all obvious reasons, given what's been explained to you about limitations on commercial and confidence arrangements, they haven't been able to answer them in the way that you would like. They have sought to explain to you the processes that are ordinarily applied to all of these things, as they've done on many other occasions. I think that a good faith exchange would involve acknowledging that you have repeatedly asked officials to confirm matters which they are not at liberty to confirm to you.
Minister, in 2019 the US ceased to be a signatory, or pulled themselves out of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which had previously forsworn them all nuclear and conventional ground-launched ballistic missiles and cruise missiles with ranges of 500 to 5,500 kilometres. Once the US pulled out of that treaty, Australia has now cooperated with the US, and your government has celebrated both the US and Australia firing weapons that used to be covered by that treaty. Are you aware of that?
I'll ask officials to talk you through, provide a response. You are speaking about a level of detail, which I'm sure they are across, but as someone who is not actually sworn to this portfolio, I'm afraid I'm unable to assist you.
Well, having set that scene, when the officials who can answer this question come forward, during exercise Talisman Sabre 25, the US fired from Australia the Mid-Range Capability System, or the Typhon missile system. And that was the first time that a land-based MRC had been fired outside of the Americas. Is that right? That's what was said in the Defence Puff. Is that right?
I think you're referring to the precision strike missile, Senator Shoebridge. I'll just have our Land Force colleagues come and join us. An Australian unit fired a precision strike missile as part of Exercise Talisman Sabre for the first time.
In July.
In July.
And this was a missile that, up until 2019, the US would not have been able to deploy because they were a signatory to the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty.
Senator Shoebridge, Major General Richard Vague, headland capability. I think the missile you are referring to is this precision strike missile. That was fired by us out of an Australian HIMARS launcher in the Northern Territory. The US deployed the mid-range capability, as you referred to as the Typhon. They fired SM-6 during that activity.
Minister, are you aware that Russia has now withdrawn from the same treaty, leading to the prospect of a very real arms race on intermediate missiles?
I'll defer to officials on the treaty.
Officials are aware that Russia has now, as of August this year, also pulled out of that treaty?
So, Senator, you're referring to the Intermediate Range Nuclear Force Treaty, the INF
Correct.
Treaty. The INF Treaty, from my understanding, and Senator, I'll need to check to correct the record if I'm wrong, but I think it expired in 2019, and the issue was
sorry,
not...
you're right, Mr. Jeffries. I've misdescribed it. Russia, which up until August of this year said they would still be bound by the treaty, even though it had expired, has said in August they would no longer be bound by the terms of the treaty.
And I think the INF forms part of a series of agreements that the United States and the then Soviet Union agreed in the latter half of the Cold War to control the spread and proliferation of strategic capabilities. The non-renewal of those agreements is of concern, even though Australia, of course, is not party to the INF Treaty. We worry about the risk created by the fact that not only do you have a more limited regime that covers strategic weapons that occur between Russia and the United States, but also now increasingly you have, of course, Chinese development of strategic capabilities China, as you know, has at this stage, the largest development program for strategic nuclear capabilities. So there is a need for a resumption of strategic level treaties to be renewed. But of course, within all of that, we seek to work closely both with our partners and, of course, in our region on how do we ensure that we maintain.
Yes, true. I'm all for trying to either reinstate that treaty or have a fresh treaty that limits that class of weapons. But the problem is Australia's behaviour and Australia's cooperation with the United States is one of the key reasons Russia has now ceased to feel bound by or comply with that. You're aware of that. Australia's activity and Australia's working with the United States to fire off both a Typhoon and a PRISM missile was critical in Russia deciding not to be bound by the treaty terms anymore.
I wouldn't agree with that assertion, Senator.
Well, because that's what Russia said when it made its announcement that it was no longer going to consider itself bound in a statement made on the 4th of August of 2025. And to be clear, I think Russia is a nasty, aggressive, dangerous global player. But in this regard, their concerns are very valid. And they said this, with regard to the Asia-Pacific...
to amplify their public messaging. That's terrific.
Well, I'm about to point out that when you give somebody with a history of aggression a reason, a valid reason, to engage in behaviour, they probably will take it. And this is what they said. With regard to the Asia-Pacific, we note that under the pretext of training activities, a Typhoon mid-range missile system was brought to the Philippines in April 2024, still stationed in the archipelago. A system of the same type was employed this July in Australia during live fire exercises as part of Talisman Sabre 2025 multilateral drills. In the course of these drills, the US military personnel also deployed a Dark Eagle hypersonic intermediate range system, marking its first overseas appearance. It was openly declared that this deployment was undertaken to project power, as well as underscored that such systems are rapidly deployable. Furthermore, during Talisman Sabre 2025, an Australian crew of the US-supplied HIMARS system launched a US-manufactured PRISM missile, which had been tested by the Pentagon back in 2021 to a range of more than 500 kilometres, and which consequently qualifies as a ground-launch INF-class missile. And they are some of the critical reasons why Russia said they no longer felt bound, because of Australia's own activities. Now, you say you want restraint. You say Australia doesn't want these weapon systems to proliferate, but we're doing the exact opposite, aren't we?
Senator, well, thank you for reading that statement out from the Russian government. Look, we think our advice would be to take Russian statements with a grain of salt.
But did these things happen?
They have a history of non-compliance with these treaty agreements.
And you're giving them a reason to. You're giving them a reason to.
Senator Jeffrey, please answer
the government has been very clear in its strategic documents about its concern about the military build-up that's occurring not only in our region but globally. The answer to that build-up, of course, is to reinvest in and to use our diplomatic and our strategic weight to make the case for strategic arms control. But of course, we cannot sit idle. We also need to build our capabilities to ensure that we have capabilities to defend Australia and to deter attacks on Australia in the event that security continues to deteriorate in our region. So we have to do both, Senator. And I wouldn't argue that the investments that Australia is making in its defence capabilities has much bearing at all upon the way Russia thinks about its force structure.
Minister, do you believe that Australia should be working to reinstate that treaty on intermediate missiles to make the world a safer place?
Senator, I have on a number of occasions during the course of your questioning indicated to you that whilst I make every effort to be well briefed and to appear before this committee, there are some questions of detail that really I am not read into, and I think officials are best placed to answer your questions about this particular treaty. I do, however, think that I reiterate my concern. I said it rather jokingly, but it surprises me that you choose to use this forum to amplify Russian state public information. This is not the only example where this particular country seeks to generate reasons for aggressive behaviour.
Well, Minister, you are pushing against an open door. Why do we give them the opportunity? Why do we cooperate with the US in the launching of missiles that would have been in breach of an international treaty and give the world an excuse to go down this dangerous path? Russia should not be trusted. Russia is a violent, aggressive state. Why do you give them that opportunity?
You could have stopped your question at the very beginning when you asked why do you cooperate with the US. This is a point of fundamental difference between our parties, Senator. I know that you don't support the US alliance. Our government does, and in the ways that are set out in the Defence Strategic Review, in the National Defence Strategy, and just explained to you by Mr Jeffrey, we do consider that it is necessary to bolster our capacity to work within our region to maintain peaceful arrangements and the rules-based order. Those are our objectives and they're set out pretty clearly.
Thanks, Minister. Now, Senator, just mindful, you know, we have 1 hour to go and I'd like to get to Australian Submarine Agency, so...
Well, can I ask... I'll try and get a couple of matters dealt with very quickly.
Okay.
Yep. Southern Launch, who can answer questions about the Kuniba test range and Southern Launch, which I think is contracted to Defence. Kuniba test range in South Australia run by Southern Launch.
Very awesome. Thanks.
Contracted to Defence. Who can answer questions about that?
I'm uncertain. If anyone can, they will come forward, I'm sure.
Is that for commercial activities? Or?
Sorry,
it's the Kuniba test range in South Australia. So,
Senator, I'm aware of the test range, but I'm not aware of any contracts. I'd have to take that on notice.
Is it Defence that controls the test range or registers or licenses the test range?
I believe that would be the Australian Space Agency that does the clearances for those ranges.
Right. Well, perhaps you could take this on notice. On its website, Southern Launch says over 41,000 square kilometres of secure uninhabited land at the Kuniba test range to conduct suborbital missions, including hypersonics, flight test drones and other long-duration air vehicles to test and validate cutting-edge technology. That's what they say about the range. They've been firing missiles and other material on the range, alleging it's not inhabited. But a First Nations elder, Auntie Sue, who spends a lot of time on the land, because it's her land, which is on the test range, has told my office there have been multiple examples of dangerous activities occurring, missiles being fired over them while they're on the land. And at best, Southern Launch will come to her and say, we're going to be firing missiles and you should leave. She says it's her land and they still fire the missiles.
Yes, Senator, as I said, I'm not aware of any defence activity on that range. I am aware of the range and I would have to take that on notice. But I believe that some of those space-based activities would be cleared by the Australian Space Agency, not by Defence.
Well, in November this year, Auntie Sue was on the Yellabina Yambara country with her family. When the park was being closed in around them, they didn't see the signs. And again, they saw missiles going over them. Can I ask you to take on notice what checks are done? And can I ask you to review when Southern launches material that says the land is uninhabited when it's not? First Nations people are on the land.
Senator, I'll happily take that on notice. And again, I believe that those clearances would be done by the Australian Space Agency, given the nature of Southern Launch, but we'll confirm that for you.
Yeah.
And Senator Marshall Leon Phillips, Super-Guided Weapons, I think I'd characterise it as rocket firings, not missile firings, but we will clarify that.
Well, I mean, Auntie Sue can't tell. There's just these incredibly dangerous, fearful-looking things flying over her head while she's there with her family on First Nations land.
Yep.
Understood.
All right. Well, if you could clarify that. It happened as recently as November of this year, I'm told. The crashes in the ADF and injuries in the ADF. Perhaps I'll put it to you, CDF. There have been like 20 crashes or accidents involving road vehicles from the ADF in the past 5 years, many of them causing fatalities. Can you explain why there are so many vehicle accidents? Are you undertaking a review of vehicle accidents and vehicle safety, given the number of crashes?
Senator, I'm sure my colleagues who are land vehicle specialists will come up. Of course, we take the safety of our people very seriously. I don't have the detail on the range of motor vehicle accidents that you are referring to. After particularly every fatality, yes, we review every one of those circumstances. Of course, we have similar obligations with Comcare when there is a near miss or a fatality occurring, all of which requires a thorough investigation and understanding of what has occurred.
Lieutenant General Stewart.
Thanks, Senator. Thanks for your question. I think I've got the numbers in front of me, but to answer your question in terms of our approach to it, one, when we have an uptick in the number, we address it through a safety stand down. We address it through reviewing the way that we train and trying to deconflict the time that we have, particularly convoys and the like, on the road, particularly public roads and on highways between some of our major troop concentrations, such as Brisbane and the training area.
Has there been an uptick, though, Lieutenant General? When you track the data?
Sorry. So I'll be able to provide the numbers separately. I don't have them to hand. But so, for example, this year we saw an uptick in the number, coinciding with the major exercise period. So we've instituted a range of interventions to try and understand exactly what the causes are and obviously to address those. It's a constant area.
Because time is short, and I know we want to get on, could you provide an answer on notice about the data which shows the uptick and what strategies are putting in place to keep defence personnel safe?
Yes, Senator. We'll do.
All right. And while we're on data showing substantial increases in issues, the data that I've got compiled by, I'm very grateful actually for the Parliamentary Library to do it, shows that the levels of serious injury or illness which have been caused by workplace inside the ADF, inside defence more broadly, has substantially increased from 2019-20 to 133, 126 of which were in the IDF in 2019-20, to 260 now in the most recent data in 24-25, and each year has an uptick. 2021, 167, well, it's 21-22, 161, 22-23, 163, 23-24, 235, and then 24-25, this massive 260 instances of serious injury or illness in the ADF, double what it was in 2019-20. Again, is there an explanation for this?
So, Senator, in the absence, I'm not sure what the data refers to or the basis by which it's been compiled.
This is in the annual reports, Defence annual reports.
Then, Senator, we'll take that question on notice to answer that question for you.
Noting the time, my final question is about the taipans. Who can answer taipans? Probably you, Lieutenant General. Normally when there's a complex system, a motor vehicle, train, helicopter, plane, there's engineered approved specifications are provided for the maintenance. So if you purchase a vehicle from Hanwha, they provide engineer approved specifications. Did the Army receive engineer approved specifications from NHI Industries for the MRH-90?
See if General King can provide the specifics of that.
Senator Major General Jeremy King, Head Joint Aviation Systems Division. Could you just repeat what...
Did the Army receive engineered approved specifications from NHI Industries, the manufacturer of the Taipan, for the MRH-90?
At the start of, are you referring to on acquisition of the aircraft, or specifically to the whole system, or a specific
Either on
subsystem?
acquisition or at any time after?
So, of course, as part of certification of any system that comes in, that information came through from the manufacturer, and so Australia did receive that as part of our due diligence in bringing that aircraft into service.
Well, up until June, I'm told that there was no engineer-approved specifications from NHI Industries up until June 2022. Is that right?
So that aircraft was approved to European manufacturing standards related to helicopters, and all of that due diligence was done as part of our process of introducing that aircraft into service, Senator.
Well, not only am I told there wasn't any at all till June, in June 2022, subcontractor-approved specifications were actually provided by the manufacturer, but those were not endorsed by NHI Engineering or by Airbus Asia Pacific. You had non-endorsed engineering specifications, is that right?
That's not correct, Senator.
Were they endorsed by NHI Engineering?
Well, what endorsed by NHI Engineering, Senator?
The engineered approved specifications for the MRH-90.
So it's implied if they're specifications, they are engineer approved.
Were they approved by NHI Engineering or Airbus Asia Pacific?
I'm not sure where you're going with the question, Senator, but the aircraft is a fully approved aircraft, and our due diligence was done to make sure that the specifications were done correctly in accordance with the standards that were specified when the aircraft was offered for sale to Australia.
So are you saying at all material times, Defence was in possession of engineered approved specifications for the MRH-90 that came from the manufacturer? Is that what you're telling me?
No, that's not what I'm saying. You asked me at the point of acquisition whether that aircraft had the appropriate specifications.
That's not what I asked you.
Okay, would you
My
please?
question was that, have at all material times, has Defence had engineered approved specifications for the MRH-90 endorsed by the manufacturer NHI Engineering? Have they been in Defence's possession?
So I think the answer would probably be no, Senator, and that's because at times there are modifications that are underway with the aircraft that may not necessarily have had its specifications provided to us. Right. But inevitably, if we are to approve those things being applied to the aircraft, then in order for us to do our due diligence, we need to understand those specifications and the certification. And
did you have such certification and engineered approved specifications for the modification being the rolling out of the top owl?
Yes, we did, Senator.
They came from NHI?
They came across from the German qualification organisation that was approved and certified as a approved authority, airworthiness authority by the Australian Defence Force.
Not from the manufacturer? Of the type
I would need to go back and check exactly the avenue which they came through, but I can confirm that the specifications that were identified by the Germans as a national qualification organisation were done in accordance with European standards.
Did they consider how Top Owl works in the mix of a very complex weapon system like the MRH-90?
Did who consider that? Us?
Your German engineered, your German approval certification body.
Senator, I think you were in the room earlier when Senator Roberts sought to ask questions around the inquiries that are presently underway in relation to the tragic accidents that saw the deaths of Captain Daniel Lyon, Lieutenant Maxwell Nugent, Warrant Officer Class 2 Joseph Philip Laycock and Corporal Alexander Nags. I think you also heard the evidence that was provided to you by a number of officials about the importance of allowing the inquiries to continue and to do their work, and their unwillingness to offer further commentary about those matters while that's underway. I think you are now veering very
Major
close
General
to
King,
those same matters.
Because of the time, could I ask you to take on notice that last question that I put to you, just simply so as we can end this round of questioning?
Could you
I think
repeat
we can take that on notice,
Well,
Senator.
it's on the Hansard
Why don't-
record,
we'll-
and I just note the time.
We'll take
So,
that on notice.
Thank you.
Is that it? Yep. Excellent. Well, that's it, everyone. I know there's a bit of silence there, but a very good silence. Thank you very much. So good to see you, Mr. Moriarty, and your team, as well as you, Admiral Johnston, and all your officers. Just also wanted to say Merry Christmas, everyone, and also to any of our troops that may be watching, whether they're home or abroad overseas with obviously missing out with family. Just want to wish them on behalf of the committee all the very best over the Christmas period, and we'll see everyone next year. On that note, we're going to suspend briefly and then we are still going to suspend very briefly and get ready with our next agency, the Australian Submarine Agency. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everyone. Good evening. We now have the Australian Submarine Agency, and I'd like to welcome Vice Admiral Jonathan Mead, AORAN, Director General of the ASA. Good evening.
Good evening, Senator.
Good to see you again.
Absolutely.
And to all your fine officers who are here tonight as well. Now, did you have an opening statement? And if you did,
I do.
could we table it? And if there was anything that you wanted just to flesh out for 2
what I would
seconds,
say is,
please do it now.
I'll table it.
Thanks.
I just wanted to highlight that in the month of November, USS Vermont, a Virginia-class submarine, undertook a 4-week maintenance period at HMAS Stirling. It was the most complex maintenance period undertaken by a Virginia-class submarine outside US territory, undertaken by Australian workers, Australian supply chain, Australian industry. There are a number of world-first innovations that were created by Australian companies, including Mac Waters, a WA company. It was an outstanding success. It indicates the very significant progress that government, defence, the whole of government industry has made with respect to the nuclear-powered submarine program, and specifically getting Western Australia and HMAS Stirling ready for submarine rotational forces west in 2027. That's all I have. Over.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Senator Shoebridge,
Yeah, thanks.
you have
Chair.
the call for about 20 odd minutes, and is my understanding the arrangement we've got tonight. So,
Vice Admiral Mead, good to see you.
Good to see you, Senator.
Have you got a copy of the Richardson review yet?
No, I don't have, except from what I mentioned last time.
No, it hasn't gone beyond where we were last time.
Correct.
That's fine. Have you seen the comments from the senior figure, Lord Case, who's steering Barrow's regeneration in the UK for the purpose of getting Barrow and the UK industrial base ready to deliver the SSN AUKUS? Have you seen those comments that have been made by Lord Case to the UK Defence Committee?
No, I don't think I have.
Well, he's just told the UK Defence Committee, and Lord Case, of course, is the chair of what's called Team Barrow, set up by the UK government, a former cabinet secretary. He's just told the UK Defence Committee, when asked whether or not the AUKUS SSN project was on track, he avoided any assurances. He described the target as a very demanding target and added it would be a real challenge to deliver. That's the bloke on the ground in the UK, Lord Case, in charge of Team Barrow. Does that surprise you?
Absolutely not. The build of SSN AUKUS, whether in the UK or specifically Australia, is a very demanding challenge. In fact, it is the most complex undertaking that Australia is ever undertaking, and will be the most complex engineering task in the world. So I totally support what his comments are, both in the UK but even more so in Australia.
Do you support Lord Case's comments that that Barrow itself doesn't have the infrastructure in place to support the required workforce? It doesn't have the housing, schools or hospitals, and that there isn't a plan to get them on board so that the workforce is there to produce the boats in time?
I don't have Lord Case's transcript. I'm only going on what you're saying. I don't have that level of detail. The level of detail I've got is the detail provided to me by BAE as our co-builder, the Submarine Delivery Agency from the UK Ministry of Defence, and the Chief Nuclear Officer from the Ministry of Defence that has told us that the UK SSN AUKUS remains on track, as does ours down in Osborne, South Australia.
Well, you see, Lord Case, who's responsible for making sure that the Barrow part of the AUKUS SSN, which is a critical part of it, this is what he said. we are behind where we need to be. We do not have the housing that we need for workforce growth. Has the government told you that? That when it comes to the targets that they need in Barrow, that they are, to quote Lord Case, behind where we need to be? Has the UK government told you that?
Senator, are you in a position to table the information you're drawing from? Because, as is so often the case in this committee, you're asking officials to take on face value your characterisation of things that are happening in other jurisdictions and in other places. I just wonder, regrettably, not all senators accurately communicate what has actually been said elsewhere.
I'll let you know
and
it's
so
coming.
It would be better if it were...
Because it's late, I haven't got time to print it or table it.
okay.
It comes from the current reporting on UK DJ, which is one of the online defence-related UK publications, UK
So it's
DJ.
a third-party account of a thing that might have happened in a House of
It's
Commons
media
committee,
reporting
is
about
that
what's
right?
just happened in the UK in front of the Defence Committee. So I'm sorry I haven't got real-time transcript from the UK Defence Committee.
Do you
but I'm
believe that this
providing-
evidence was given this evening or yesterday, or does it give any indication in your article about when? I mean, it's just, it really isn't reasonable, I think, to ask officials to respond to line-by-line comments.
It's just been published. So I would have liked to have had it before it was published, but I've only got it because it's just been published.
Well, it might constrain what officials can...
So are you aware of those resource constraints, infrastructure constraints that are happening in Barrow as identified? Had Lord Case told you about this, or had the UK told you about this before he gave that evidence to the Defence Committee, Admiral Mead?
No, I'm not aware, but as I mentioned before, we have been given reassurances that the design of the UK SSN AUKUS is on track. We have been given assurances from the Submarine Delivery Agency and from the MOD that they are on track to commence build this decade of SSN AUKUS, as is Australia down at Osborne, which will be the most advanced manufacturing centre in the world.
Are you able to provide a schedule of payments that have been made so far to the US under AUKUS?
US?
The US.
Yes, I can.
And there was an additional $1 billion payable?
By the end of 2025.
Correct. Has that been paid?
Can I get my Chief Finance Officer? I think the answer is no.
It hasn't been paid yet?
Good evening, Senator. Marlena Davis, Acting Chief Operating Officer. No, that payment has not been made yet.
But it's due by the end of this year?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Can you give me a schedule of can you give this committee a schedule of payments made to the UK?
I've already gave testimony at previous of the amounts that were paid in 23-24, and I also provided the next payment, which was earlier this financial year, which was 25-26, and that amount was £80 million. I'd have to take on notice, if I can just see if I've got that Australian dollar equivalent on me here, what that would be, but that's where we're up to there. As I've mentioned in previous testimony, we have a mutual agreement between the UK and the US to arrive at payments on an annual basis, but we did have a sort of broad outline of half of the £2.4 billion would be paid by the end of 27-28.
Yeah. All right. And okay, thank you for that. Good news, Admiral Mead. I have the actual transcript from the Defence Committee. It's just been provided to me. And this is what Lord Case said when he was asked by Emma Lewell, are you confident that Barrow is on target? Are you confident that it's on target? Lord Case said, that is a very demanding target, let me put it like that. That will be a real challenge to deliver. It is for BAE Systems to talk about what's going on inside the yard. The thing we are under pressure to do is deliver housing, schools and hospitals to make sure that the workforce is there to produce the boats on time. We are behind where we need to be. We do not have the housing we need for workforce growth. We spent a lot of time together last month talking about how we can accelerate the house building. As for the details of what's going on in the yard, that's for BAE Systems and MOD rather than us. That's the transcript
I think I
of the
found the
committee.
transcript, Senator. Is it the oral evidence provided on Wednesday, the 26th of November, 2025?
Wednesday, the 26th of November, 2025, which was just reported then.
Yeah, and so the witnesses at this were really very focused on the social dimensions of the project, and so I can see that they had the chair of Team Barrow, the CEO of Team Barrow, the head of Team Barrow, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and a person who is the Director of Thriving Places,
Correct.
Westmoreland and Furness Council. So it's a very sort of domestically focused piece of work,
This is
isn't
the
it?
essential civilian infrastructure to get the workforce necessary to deliver it. The person in charge of the essential civilian infrastructure is Lord Case, and he says it's not on target.
I think it's just worth, but I guess I just wanted to make that context clear because it wasn't clear from the way you're asking the questions whether Lord Case was speaking about the entire project or this rather
Let's be clear, he's just talking about all the civilian infrastructure necessary to have the workforce to deliver it. He says it's not on track, and he pointed all the infrastructure blocks. Are you still confident, Admiral Mate, that AUKUS SSN and the UK parties is on track?
I am confident there, Senator. I think, as you mentioned there, the Lord Case says that work needs to be done to develop those housing and those social aspects. We've been given assurances from BAE and the MOD and the Submarine Delivery Agency that they are on track. As Lord Case said, it's not for him to be able to look into Barrow where the submarine will be built. That is the core aspect.
He's in Barrow.
Sorry?
He's in Barrow. He's the head of Team Barrow.
I'm talking about in Barrow, the shipyard itself. He's not looking into the shipyard and the build of the shipyard. He's talking about the periphery.
Well,
we have been given assurances from the UK that they are on track.
Well, the problem is the guy on the ground says, and to be clear, he was asked by Emma Lewell, member, what are your timescales and plans and when will you be in a position to enable a boat to be delivered every 18 months? Lord Case, we've already heard from BAE Systems, so we're going to leave the questions about the programmatic building of boats every 18 months to BAE Systems.
Yes.
Are you confident that it is on target? And that's where he said, that's a very demanding target. Let me put it like that. That'll be a real challenge to deliver. And then he pointed out all of those infrastructure constraints. So you sit here and tell us one thing, that it's all on track in the UK, but Lord Case, who's on the ground, says quite the opposite, doesn't he?
I'm telling you about the person on the ground is not Lord Case writ large. It is the person in the shipyard, it is the person in the MOD and the person in the Submarine Delivery Agency. And by person, I mean persons, thousands of people that are involved in the program that are giving us the reassurances that UK SSN AUKUS is on track.
Okay. All right. Well, I assume you haven't spoken with Lord Case.
I have not spoken to Lord Case. I have spoken to the Submarine Delivery Agency very recently. I have spoken to the MOD very recently. I have spoken to the CEO Global of BAE and all the key people in BAE. I have spoken to the Chief Nuclear Officer. All tell me SSN AUKUS UK is on track.
And we should just ignore what Lord Case says? We should just ignore that?
I reiterate my statement there, Senator. The UK MOD, the UK Submarine Delivery Agency and BAE, writ large, on the ground, are telling me that the delivery of SSN AUKUS UK is on track. The fact that Lord Case said is a demanding project, we totally agree with. Of course it's a demanding project. Nuclear submarines are more complex than space shuttles. But that's why we had the very best people in the world. That's why we had the very best people in Australia working on this program.
He said, to be clear, he said the opposite of on track. He said we are behind where we need to be. That's the opposite of on track, isn't it? It's almost the direct opposite, Admiral Mead.
Senator, I have told you now for the third time the assurances that we've been given by both UK government and UK industry that are actually building the submarine.
Yep. in Barrow where Lord Case says the infrastructure isn't in place to provide the workplace to deliver the outcomes, but we just ignore that second part of it?
Well, I think, honestly, I'm reading the transcript as we sit here, Senator Shoebridge.
I'm glad you got it, 'cause
I
I've
can
got
see
nothing
that.
in front of me.
Sorry?
I'm glad you've got it, because I've got nothing here, so...
Yes. I mean, again, I do think that it is a little incumbent on senators who want to make detailed reference to documentation to provide it so that other committee members can see it and so that witnesses can see it. But this is obviously in the UK, like in many of our communities, people want to understand what the interaction is between defence enterprise and the social impacts in their local places. And perusing the transcript very briefly tonight, it seems to me that this is the subject of much of the testimony that's here. It does incidentally include some very positive testimony from some of the witnesses about what the partnership with Australia might bring, and positive testimony about their previous experience working with Australians, which I think is something we can reflect upon with some pride.
Vice Admiral Mead, are you aware of the calls that have come from the UNSW Canberra's Naval Studies Group, as well as from former Vice Admiral Peter Jones, calling for an audit on the AUKUS cost estimate? Are you aware of those calls?
I'm not aware of those calls, Senator.
Oh, well. UNSW Canberra's Naval Studies Group has called for an urgent and comprehensive audit of AUKUS costs to provide a realistic financial baseline. Now, this was reported in The Australian on the 17th of November. That wasn't brought to your attention, Vice Admiral Mead?
Senator, can I just say that the cost baseline outlined for Australia's NPS program has gone through extreme rigour, including Department of Finance, Department of Treasury, Prime Minister and Cabinet and other organisations to provide the best advice possible to government. We continually update our figures as more information comes to hand, and at the moment we remain within our cost envelope.
Well, you see, the UNSW Canberra's Naval Studies Group have said that the Pillar 1 submarine program was, and I quote them here, was not comprehensively costed at the outset, and its full demand on the defence budget is still to be fully quantified. They also said they urged the government to, and I quote, conduct a comprehensive, independently verified costing of AUKUS Pillar 1 as a matter of urgency to allow for rebaselining of defence financial requirements and a recalculation of required overall defence funding. Are you saying that that study hasn't been brought to your attention?
I'm not aware of that study. I'm not aware of that requirement. What I've told you is the way that we have provided advice to government through information from our partners, through industry over the last 2 years, through various other means to come up with the most accurate, and as the program matures, the cost estimate will mature as well. We were very upfront with government on that. We also included a 50% contingency factor in our cost estimate for the very reasons that as events came to bear, as we got more information in this program, because we needed to develop this capability as quickly as possible, that there may be unforeseen costs. And that's why we now have a 50% cost estimate, far greater than normal programs. We've been very transparent about this. Our cost estimate includes sustainment, full FIC, acquisition, and a 50% cost contingency.
Well, so the lead author, Admiral Jones, do you respect the opinion of the lead author, Admiral Jones?
I know Admiral Jones very well, but he's not a financial expert. He is a remarkable naval officer, one I have great respect for, but he's not an auditor. He's not a financial has a financial background.
But he knows his way around a defence project. He's seen defence project after defence project either meet or exceed budget. The lead author of a report that calls for a comprehensive, independently verified costing of AUKUS Pillar 1, which also says that it wasn't comprehensively costed at the outset. This report was provided to help government and it hasn't even been brought to your attention. Is that right?
I haven't seen the report.
Has anyone in the ASA seen the report? I'm getting shaking heads. Nobody in the ASA has seen the report?
Well, I don't think anybody's shaking their heads just for the record, but anyway.
Well, I'm sorry, has anyone in the room from the ASA
Well,
seen
no,
the
direct your questions through the chair to the witnesses at the table. Senator?
So if the report comes to me, we will read the report. We welcome all reports. Every time I have this discussion with you, Senator Shoebridge, I've said that there is no hubris in the Australian Submarine Agency.
Every time I ask you about reports, you haven't got them. You haven't got the Richardson report, you haven't got the Valdez report, you haven't got this report. Every time I ask you about reports...
The Valdez report does not concern the ASA. The Richardson report was a report commissioned by the Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I'm just saying, every time I ask you about reports, you haven't got them.
Well,
that's not correct.
Okay. But you haven't looked at it, you don't know what it says, you respect the author, but you think he's wrong.
Marker, really. Yeah, we had a deal.
Let us read the report first. I can't comment on a report that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Admiral Jones is not an auditor. Just let us see the report. Let us do the analysis so we can make a judgment on it.
All right.
He's not an economist by any chance? No, that was a joke, don't worry.
Can you say that there was you say that the AUKUS costings have been reviewed by Finance and Treasury. Who came up with the original costing, the $368 billion? How was that $368 billion arrived at? Because it was kind of remarkable that it had a 50% contingency fee, but who came up with it? How was it done?
No, I think it was very wise to put a 50% contingency fee onto it. Because we were doing a program that has not been undertaken in government before, a program of the hardest thing that Australia has ever done before, a program that there is no copybook in Australia.
This is all true. So I'm asking you, who did it? Who came up with the costing?
So the Nuclear Powered Submarine Task Force, with Defence, with whole of government, including Department of Finance, Treasury and other agencies, working through normal defence processes, the Investment Committee, Capability Gate Reviews, Defence Committee, SCONS and the NSC put up the cost estimate.
So was there a costed proposal put before the Investment Committee? A fully costed proposal put before the Investment Committee? And if so, when was that done?
There was an estimate put before the Defence Committee. We provided a cost estimate based on the best information we had at the time.
What was the best
parametric
information
at the time? As you know, we provided at the time it was a costings over the FEs, which I think was $9 billion, and I can stand here to be corrected. Over the decade was $53 to $63 billion, and the total cost of the program was 0.15% of GDP. We remain within the 0.15% of GDP. The costings of the forward estimates have moved as we have moved forward in time.
So the costings in the forward estimates have moved. How have they moved, and what's the current estimate? What's the current estimate for the project?
I'd have to take that. I think it's around 13 billion. Acting CFO, do you have that information to hand?
Timmy Lamb, Acting Chief Financial Officer. The current estimate across the forward program for the NPS program currently approved to date is $15.6 billion to date.
All right. And that's out to when?
I'll take that.
I think that's over
the next 4 years?
I think
that's across.
I think it's a bit beyond the next 4 years. That's the total that's been approved today by NSC. Yep. Probably have to take...
Well, can you take on notice the current 4-year budget and where the $15.6 billion comes from?
So the 15.6 is what has been approved to date.
Yep.
We'll take on notice
All right.
the forward estimate profile in the approved program.
In the short time I have available, I'd like to go to another question. Vice Admiral, have you met with TELUS Holdings?
No, I've not met with TELUS
Has
Holdings.
anyone from ASA met with TELUS Holdings?
Senator Shoebridge, good evening. Tim Hodgson, Deputy Director General Technical. Yes, I met with TELUS Holdings along with ARWA nearly 2 years ago, where they came to give a presentation to us of their capability.
All right. Was nuclear waste disposal and storage mentioned in that discussion?
They were presenting their nuclear waste storage disposal capability.
Were they discussing the prospect of nuclear waste storage in the Northern Territory?
No.
Where were they discussing?
They were just. I'd have to take that on notice, Senator.
All right.
I can't recall. It was some considerable time ago.
TELUS is in the process of developing a potential nuclear waste site about 100 km south of Alice Springs on Arrende land. Was that discussed in the meeting?
I can't recall, Senator.
But you'll take it on notice?
I'll take it on notice, yeah.
Have you met with Amentum?
I regularly meet with Amentum colleagues.
Have you met with Amentum? Did they come to the TELUS meeting?
No.
Have you met with Amentum and discussed nuclear waste disposal?
No.
Admiral Mead, are you aware of the proposed Chandler project, which is the one that I was discussing, which is 100 km south of Alice?
I'm not aware, Senator.
Mr Hodgson, are you aware of the Chandler project?
I don't recognise the name Chandler Project, no, Senator.
Are you aware of a proposal to store nuclear waste in an underground facility built in a salt pan, a former lake bed, about 100 km south of Alice Springs?
Not to my recollection, no, Senator.
All right, and that wasn't discussed with you with TELUS?
Not that I recall.
All right. Have you had discussions with any other private corporations about the storage of nuclear waste?
No.
Just TELUS?
Just TELUS.
All right. Did TELUS discuss with you any other potential facility for the storage of nuclear waste?
I'll take that on notice, Senator.
All right. Vice Admiral, is the ASA, does the ASA have a solution? Do you have a proposed solution for the storage of high-level nuclear waste?
As you know, Senator, we've mentioned this on numerous occasions. We commissioned a review that looked at waste. That review is with government. They are analysing the review. As the Deputy Prime Minister indicated on numerous occasions, we need to get this right. If you use a naval reactor's expression, getting it right is getting it fast. Do it right the first time. We have plenty of time to do this. We continue that deliberation to make sure that we can analyse.
Vice Admiral Mead, this is not for me, it's for other members of the committee. But if you have any more details, could you please place them on those? And that ends my questions.
All right. On that note, we are now going to let you go. So thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you and your team.
Thank you, Senator.
And we look forward to seeing you next year at Estimates in February. All right. Have a good Christmas, everyone. Now, we're getting ready with the Australian Signals Directorate, so hopefully they're in the back somewhere, and we'll just suspend briefly. Thanks, Hansard. All right, now welcome back, everyone. I now like to welcome Australian Signals Directorate, Abigail Bradshaw, CSC, Director General of ASD. Hello, Abigail. How are you, Director General?
Well, thank you, Senator.
Good to see you and your team. Now, do you have an opening statement tonight?
I do not.
Excellent. Now, we're going to go straight to questions. Senator Chandler.
Thank you very much, Chair.
You'll take us till 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Ms Bradshaw, what can you tell us about the Inspector General's current investigation into the ASD?
Senator, there are clearly limits around what I am able to say in relation to the IGIS and his operations. The normal practice is that IGIS reports in relation to his investigations and inquiries are reported in the classified PJ-SIS forum. What I can say to you is I am aware of allegations published in the Australian Financial Review. I can also tell you that the first time I became aware of those allegations was on the 27th of November, when those allegations were published in the Australian Financial Review. In response to that publication, ASD published a statement, which is at asd.gov.au, that was published on the 27th of November. That statement was prepared by the Chief Operating Officer in conjunction with the Inspector General, noting the limitations around what ASD is able to say about the Inspector General. We have also tabled Quan number 3. That Quan, in conjunction with the statement at asd.gov.au, clarifies that the IGIS own motion inquiry referred to by the Australian Financial Review relates to a completely separate operational matter and not a procurement matter.
Right. Ms Bradshaw, does the ASD's conflict of interest policy require conflicts to be declared before every procurement?
I beg your pardon?
Does the ASD's conflict of interest policy, which I'm assuming you have, require conflicts of interest to be declared before every procurement?
Senator, ASD has a comprehensive conflict of interest policy. It's consistent entirely with the APSC conflict of interest framework and the better practice model. Our policy actually requires all contracting parties and staff to adhere to strict disclosure obligations, and those are set out in an internal policy. In the circumstances, Senator, given that these allegations relate to me, I will let the Chief Operating Officer respond to your question. I think that's more appropriate. And noting also that the Chief Operating Officer, to separate me from the allegations made in the AFR, was responsible for negotiating the statement and the Quan in conjunction with the IGIS.
Mr First.
Senator, our policy, as the Director General has said, is consistent with the APSC guidance on conflicts of interest for management, and we do require staff and contractors to declare conflicts of interest when they're involved in a procurement.
Every single procurement?
That's right.
Every single procurement. And just to confirm, Mr First, and forgive me for speaking about you like you're not here, Ms Bradshaw, but Ms Bradshaw is subject to those same policies as well?
That is correct.
Is anyone at the ASD, including Ms Bradshaw, required to declare conflicts of interest when they are providing advice or reports to the PJ-SIS or to the Foreign Investment Review Board?
Senator, I would have to familiarise myself again with those particular committees' rules around their requirements, so I may need to take that on notice.
Ms Bradshaw, is there anything you can add to that?
I'm sorry, Senator. I honestly don't understand the question. What the policy as it operates and applies to me and every staff member of ASD is that each year, or on the change of a potential conflict of interest, a contractor or a staff member is obliged to submit a conflict of interest declaration. I did that on joining ASD in March of 2020. I did that when the circumstances of my husband's employment generated the opportunity for potential other conflicts of interest. And I did that again when my husband left that employment. When I became Director General, the conflicts of interest are declared both to the Department and to the Deputy Prime Minister. For the period during which there was the potential for a conflict of interest to arise in my situation, as it relates to me, with any dealings I might have in my role then as a head of the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, I had a written plan for the management of conflicts of interest that was agreed between myself and the then Director General. That plan had a number of different elements. It required, for example, a written plan was part of it, but also I would declare regularly in meetings. I would remind staff of the potential for conflict of interest. I was removed from discussions which would relate to that company, and I was not involved at any stage in any decision-making, consideration of procurement, or even capabilities which were acquired by ASD in any of the contracts set out in the AFR reporting.
Are you required to declare any conflicts of interest to the PJSIS or to the FIRB?
I don't appear before the FIRB.
Do you provide advice to the FIRB?
Well, ASD provides advice to the FIRB in select matters.
And when you're providing that advice, are you required to declare a conflict of interest?
I've never had a situation in which potential conflict of interest would arise.
Chair, if I still have the call until 10 o'clock. Yes. Thank you.
That hasn't changed, yeah.
Great.
Unless you want to.
I have a more policy-based issue to traverse with you, if I may. Ms Bradshaw, I assume with your expertise you would be aware of Beidou navigation satellite system?
No, Senator.
Oh, it's probably the fancy name for China's global navigation system, like their GPS system. Have you conducted a risk assessment on Beidou signals being used in Australian critical infrastructure?
Not to my knowledge, Senator, but I'm happy to take it on notice.
Thank you.
I would also say that such an activity is a matter which really would fall more... It would be easier to deal with in the context of the PJSIS.
Sorry, do you mean you would prefer to talk about it within the context of the PJSIS? Or?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Sure.
Because it relates to assessments and functions of ASD which can't be talked about in this forum.
Right. If only I had the honour of sitting on this committee.
Sorry, we're on a completely different line of inquiry.
What was that? Sorry, Ms Bradshaw.
I'm sorry, I've made the assumption we're on a completely different line of inquiry now. We've left the procurement matters.
Sorry, we're done with that one.
I'm sorry, I was wondering, anyway.
Whether that had any connection to do with your conflicts of interest. No, sorry, I should have made that clearer. Okay, alleged conflicts of interest. If that's the case then, I'm just having a look through my other list of issues to raise with you quickly, and I apologise that we are jumping all over the place. Post-quantum cryptography.
Yes, Senator.
This is obviously going to be a concern that everyone will have to deal with at some point, but particularly government. I understand that you are the central agency that will have responsibility for dealing with whatever policy ends up being developed to deal with PQC. Well, that's what everybody else has told us. Is that the case, and what are you working on in this space?
Yes, Senator, thanks. So post-quantum cryptography So to be clear, this is the capacity to use crypt to decrypt communications. Yes. ASD's role is to give technical advice on how to and when to adjust standards, and we issue advice, including, for example, in the Information Security Manual, about the availability of post-quantum resistant algorithms, and we have done so. So within the ISM, we have published the availability of algorithms, and we've also given advice about the timeframes in which we think it would be best practice for entities to transition.
Are you allowed to tell us what those timeframes are?
I can. I'll pass to
Thank you.
Ms Crowe, who's the head of the Australian Cybersecurity Centre.
Thank you, DG. Thank you, Senator. So with post-quantum cryptography, ASD's role, as the DG mentioned, is to provide the technical standards, and we do that through the Information Security Manual, which applies to government agencies under the Protective Security Policy Framework. We also provide public advice, and we have done so since 2022, when we initially published our first publication on planning for post-quantum cryptography. Since that time, the Information Security Manual has been updated from March 2024. The first update stating that any new cryptography that's going to be within new procurement should be considered in the context of transitioning to more secure algorithms. And then in September of 2024, we updated the Information Security Manual again, which listed two post-quantum approved algorithms by ASD. Those two algorithms are approved by the US National Institute of Standards and Technology, which we support. And later this year, in September 25, a publication to assist agencies in developing transition plans across their networks and systems to understand what parts of the network and systems need to be migrated over to those forms of secure algorithms by 2030. Those timeframes are consistent with our United States counterparts and the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. It does vary across our other counterparts in UK and Canada, but that is mainly characterised around the fact that they are more complex systems and jurisdictions are different across the countries that they have to work through.
Thank you very much, Ms Crowe. In the interest of finishing on time, I'll hand it over there, Chair.
You're an expert. Now, it being bang on 10 o'clock, that is it for tonight. And I'm really sorry to the Inspector General of the ADF. I know you're here, mate, but thank you for being here. Can I just wish everyone a Merry Christmas? That concludes today's hearing of the Defence Portfolio for today's estimates. As I mentioned earlier in the day, that we as a committee have set the 11th of December when senators are to submit written questions on notice, and the committee has set the 29th of January next year, that is the year 2026, as the date for the return of answers to any questions that were taken on notice. I'd like to thank Minister McAllister, obviously the department secretaries that appeared before us, Alison Frame and Greg Moriarty, as well as Admiral Johnston, and all the officers of the Departments of Veterans Affairs and Defence agencies and all the other witnesses today. Can I also thank Hansard Broadcasting and the Secretariat as well. But we'll be here tomorrow with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. On that note, I declare this hearing today adjourned.